Hello everyone, it's Robin the Delta Crafter, and I want to thank you for joining me for another holiday video on my YouTube channel. For today's cards, we're going to be using some distress inks to watercolor some holiday backgrounds. Let's take a look at the products we'll be using to make these cards. We're going to be using some Salvaged Patina, Mermaid Lagoon, and Prize Ribbon distress inks to create one of our backgrounds. We're going to have two different palettes today, and so the second palette is going to be consisting of Kitsch Flamingo, Picked Raspberry, and Wilted Violet. The best cardstock to use for this kind of technique is a watercolor paper. So I'm using some Canson XL watercolor paper that I've cut down into some panels for us. I'm also going to be using the Bitty Buzzwords Holidays by Honeybee Stamps. I have a couple of other die sets that I'm going to be using, and you'll see those later on in the video. I'm going to be taping my watercolor panels down to a hardboard in order to keep my paper as straight as I possibly can. And to do that, I'm going to be using some painter's tape. Let's go ahead and jump into the project. To get started, we're going to want to tape down our watercolor paper panel to our hardboard. For a hardboard, I'm just using a clipboard that I have plenty of stashed around the house. So I'm using that clipboard as a place to kind of hold my watercolor paper straight. So I'm going to smush some ink down on my glass craft mat. This is a glass craft mat from Glass Mat Studio. I have a link and a discount code for you in the description. So before I add any ink to our watercolor paper, I'm going to wet the paper down first with just some plain water. And this is called a wet on wet technique. So I'm going to wet the paper down, and then I'm going to bring my very watered down inks to the paper and paint them all over. So I'm going to wet up my Salvaged Patina on my glass craft mat. Get my my paintbrush full of the paint. And I'm going to take that loaded up paintbrush and drag that color across my paper. It's very, very faint right now because, again, there's lots of water that I've added to this color already. Next, I'm going to come in with the Mermaid Lagoon, and I'm going to try to feather in the Mermaid Lagoon into the Salvaged Patina because I want an ombre effect. So I'm just adding a little bit more of that Mermaid Lagoon, and now I'm coming in with the Prize Ribbon. And again, I'm going to fade that Prize Ribbon into the Mermaid Lagoon to create that ombre effect. Now that I've done all of my first layer of paint, I'm going to come in with my heat tool and dry this dry the paint in place, because I'm going to come back in with a second layer of paint. So I'm going to repeat my steps, just adding the Salvaged Patina, adding more of the Mermaid Lagoon, and then adding the Prize Ribbon. This time, though, my ink is not as watered down as it was the first time. So you can see that I'm building up a more intense color with this second layer of paint. And that's going to give me the effect that I'm looking for. I hit my watercolor background with the heat tool, dried it real quick, and now look at the results that we were able to achieve. I love the way that these colors came together. So now that we've got our background ready, and you can see that it's pretty flat too, considering how much water I put on there. Now it's time to go ahead and die cut the sentiments. I'm not using the stamps from this Bitty Buzzword set, just the dies. So I'm going to be using the die and the shadow to create our sentiment. This Hero Arts compact cutter is just fantastic. I love having this little cutter on my desktop because for small sentiments like this and other die cuts, I'm usually able to get everything through on my compact cutter. So I'm going to run my dies through a couple of times and get everything cut out and build up some dimension as well. Poke out all the extra little pieces and get everything ready to be stacked up for dimension. I decided to use vellum as my my shadow layer because I wanted you to be able to see the colors that we were creating on the background through the vellum. Now that I've gotten all the pieces cut out, you can see that I cut out a couple of extra die cuts from white cardstock. I'm going to glue everything together, including 2 layers of white cardstock, 1 layer of silver cardstock. So that's going to give us 3 layers of dimension on the sentiment word. And then I'm going to glue and adhere the sentiment to the shadow. Barely Arts glue is my go-to glue, especially when I'm working with small sentiments like these, and very scripty sentiments as well. So now you can see I'm adhering the word Christmas to our shadow, and now I'm going to adhere Merry to its shadow. I place an acrylic block on my sentiments to give a little bit of weight while the adhesive dries. So now that the sentiments have had a chance to dry, it's time to go ahead and adhere them to our card. I liked having the silver sentiment on there. I'm going to try to hide all my adhesive behind the silver and white stacked up sentiment. That way, because you know vellum will show whatever adhesive you use on it, but having this sentiment in front of it will give me a place to hide the glue behind. Using my reverse tweezers, I'm finding just the perfect spot to lay down my sentiments. So I'm going to adhere both sentiments to the card panel, and then I'm going to bring in some embellishments to add to this card panel. I decided to bring in some silver pearls from Pinkfresh Studio, and again I'm going to use that Barely Arts glue to secure these pearls to my card. This is not going to be a card that outwardly just screams Christmas. It's not going to have any like holly leaves or berries on it, no Santa Clauses, no snowmen or anything like that. But it's going to be more of a subtle and quiet Christmas card. So now we're going to move on to our second palette of colors. We're going to just repeat the same steps that we did for our first color palette. We're going to use Kitsch Flamingo, Picked Raspberry, and Wilted Violet. We're going to lay down our first layer of color, which is pretty watered down, hit it with our heat tool, and then we're going to go in with a second, more intense layer of color as well, just like we did with the first panel. We're going to hit this panel with the heat gun, dry it all up, and get ready to embellish. This card is going to be a little bit more in your face holiday. So I'm going to be using the Christmas Words Stamp and Cut XL set from Hero Arts to give us a little bit of a bigger, bolder sentiment for this card. I'm also going to be using one of the leaf dies from the Holly Berries Stamp and Cut XL set from also from Hero Arts. This set is a brand new release for 2022 and I absolutely love it. I'm going to be cutting those holly leaves out of vellum. I'm going to be able to run all of these pieces through my Hero Arts compact cutter, which is going to work out really great. By the way, I will have all the products that I'm using today listed and linked below in the description box, as well as on my coordinating blog post. All right, let's go ahead and start to assemble our die cuts. I die cut 3 layers of this sentiment, again, because I love adding dimension to my cards, and it's easy to do with your sentiments. You just need to cut out a couple of extra pieces of your sentiment and you can layer those up to create some dimension. So I've gone ahead and done that. I'm adding my Barely Arts glue all along my sentiments, and I'm going to stack all of these up to create that dimension. How do you guys add dimension to your cards? Leave me a comment below and let me know how you guys add dimension to your cards, or even if you add dimension at all. I'd love to hear your ideas and how you achieve this. So I'm going to continue to press these layers together and create that dimension, and then we'll be ready to assemble our card. So I've added some foam tape to the back of my panel, and that's going to give us a little bit more dimension as well. So I'm just peeling off the backer off of the foam tape. I'm going to apply the panel to my card base, which this is a landscape card. I originally thought it might be a portrait card, but with the length of this sentiment, it fit best if it was landscape. So I'm going to press that down. And then I'm going to bring in the sentiments and those hollyberry leaves to try to do a dry fit of seeing how exactly where I want everything positioned. So I'm going to test that out and then get ready to glue everything down. I dotted some of the Bearly Arts glue on the back of my sentiment, and now I'm just picking up a couple of places of the sentiment and tucking my holly stem behind the sentiment. So in order to take this card up just one more notch, I'm adding some gems from Pinkfresh Studio to the little berry parts of the leaf stems. These purple gems look so beautiful with this card and with the color palette that we've used. These gems are going to add some sparkle to this card and really make them shine for the holidays. I hope you guys have enjoyed crafting along with me today and creating these cards. I would greatly appreciate it. As always, the products will be listed and linked below, and you can also find them on my coordinating blog posts. Be sure to stop by Instagram and Facebook to join the Delta Crafter family, as well as my website and blog, thedeltacrafter.com. All of this information will be listed in the description as well. I hope you guys have a wonderful holiday season, and I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy!